You're listening to Seeker of the Word, where we explore the truth of Scripture together. I'm grateful you're here, and if you're seeking deeper understanding, you're not alone. Welcome back to Seeker of the Word. I'm your host, Mike, and today we're unpacking a question that cuts across culture, belief, and background. Why do moral claims feel so heavy? Is right and wrong just something that we make up, or is there something deeper? Whether we like to admit it or not, this is a question we must all face sooner or later. Let's dive in. Have you ever noticed how certain acts, whether good or bad, seem to carry a weight that transcends culture, religion, even time itself? Take, for example, the global reaction to the abolition of slavery. For centuries, slavery was not only accepted but legally sanctioned in many civilizations, from ancient Mesopotamia to colonial empires. Yet, over time, a collective sense of injustice emerged. People from totally different backgrounds united to declare that slavery is wrong. Why did they feel that? Or think about those who risked their lives to save others. Firefighters charging into burning buildings, strangers shielding others from harm during disasters or conflict. We honor them not simply for their bravery, but because they radiate a kind of moral beauty. Their actions ring true with something deeply good, even if they're never rewarded. That that deep chord that resonates is hard to explain with mere biology. During the German occupation of the Netherlands, a Dutch watchmaker, Corrie ten Boom, risked her life to protect strangers, Jewish neighbors hunted by the Nazis. She was arrested and sent to a concentration camp. Why did she do it? Not for fame, not because the law told her to, but because she believed it was morally right. This kind of courage isn't just admirable, it speaks to something bigger. In 2021, as lockdown stretched and hunger spread across the Philippines, a quiet movement began. A woman named Ana Patricia Non set up a bamboo cart outside her home in Quezon City with a handwritten sign, "Give what you can, take what you need." It was simple, but it sparked a nationwide wave of community pantries. Another example is how we've seen people blow the whistle on corruption, fully aware they'll lose their careers, or those who forgive the unforgivable, like the church shooting victims who told the killer, "We forgive you." The world often calls that kind of response supernatural. And maybe that's the point. It reveals a moral law that runs deeper than instinct or survival. Think of it this way. Instinct tells us to survive, but the moral impulse? That tells us to sacrifice for someone else. Where does that come from? When your heart says, "This is right, even if it costs me," you're no longer following instincts. You're perhaps answering a higher voice. On the other side of the spectrum, genocides, torture, and abuse evoke global condemnation. Even societies that once committed such acts now look back with guilt and remorse. These patterns hint at something bigger. They suggest that moral claims aren't just personal opinions or cultural agreements. They carry a seriousness, as if we're appealing to a moral reality that exists whether we like it or not. Philosopher C.S. Lewis argued in Mere Christianity that we appeal to a law of human nature whenever we say things like, "That's not fair." He wrote, If there were no light in the universe, we should never know it was dark. Dark would be without meaning. That moral weight exists because it has a contrast, a standard. But not everyone agrees. What if morality is just something we invent, like traffic laws? Some claim that morality is purely a social construct, a tool for survival, cooperation, or social control. In this view, ethics are like the rules of a board game. They're useful, but ultimately discretionary or subjective. Some argue that evolution explains morality, that humans developed ethics to survive better in groups. But that only explains why morality is useful, not why certain acts feel universally right or wrong. Evolution, even as a theory, might explain how we develop moral instincts, behaviors that helped us survive, but it does not explain why murder feels inherently evil or why betrayal still burns long after the wound. It may describe the wiring, but not the meaning. And sure, some parts of our moral systems are culturally flavored, but what counts as polite or rude varies from one country to another. But this doesn't explain our moral outrage when universal wrongs are committed. Let's test this. Imagine a society that suddenly decides stealing from the poor is morally acceptable. Would that make it actually right? Here's something strange. Even people who don't believe in objective morality still experience guilt. Why? If there's no higher standard, why does the conscience protest? It's as if we're hounded by an expectation that we did not invent. Like there's a built in alarm system that goes off even when we try to ignore it. This alarm surprisingly works even when no one's watching. Most of us feel a gut level response. No, that's wrong. Period. That response isn't just social conditioning. I'd say it's the recognition of a deeper standard. Even Immanuel Kant, not a theist by default, was struck by two things that filled him with awe: the starry heavens above and the moral law within. He believed some duties must be followed not for reward, but because they're categorically right. But here's the thing: this wasn't a new discovery. Without realizing it, Kant echoed what Scripture had long declared, that God's law is already written on our hearts. This sense of moral weight, the idea that some things are truly right or wrong, doesn't come from culture or consensus. It's deeper. It's as if a moral compass has been etched into every human soul, whether or not we recognize where it ultimately comes from. Likewise, if a dictator rewrites laws to permit torture, we don't say that's unfortunate. We say it's wrong, regardless of the law. This taps into the idea that morality stands above human consensus. Even thinkers who reject faith, like atheist philosopher Thomas Nagel, have admitted that certain moral truths are not the product of human minds. They are discovered, not invented. And if morality is discovered, not invented, what does that imply? It implies that something or someone authored that moral law. What the Apostle Paul wrote in the book of Romans 2, verses 14 to 15, declares a moral awareness embedded inside us, even outside religious instruction. If there's a moral law that applies to all, then there may also be a lawgiver, a source of moral authority not bound by human limitations. This leads us into arguments for God's existence, that objective moral values exist, and they are best explained by a moral being beyond us. To clarify, this doesn't mean atheists can't be moral. Rather, it asks, where does moral obligation even come from? And what grounds the ought behind it? If no one's watching and nothing ultimately matters, why should we even care about justice at all? If morality has real weight, then so do our choices. That means or rather our actions matter, not just in history books or headlines, but in eternity. It gives dignity to sacrifice. It gives meaning to suffering. It gives purpose to our pursuit of justice. But it also forces us to ask, are we living in line with that deeper truth? So here's the question I'll leave you with. When you feel the tug to do what's right or revolt at something wrong, what is that? Could it be more than instinct or emotion? Could it be the fingerprint of someone greater? Thanks for joining me on Seeker of the Word. If today's episode made you think, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep seeking and keep walking toward the truth. Thank you for joining Seeker of the Word. Keep seeking, keep growing. See you next time.